Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric on our very long-running series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time, and we are right in the middle of Unported Hall of Fame, where I revisit some of my earliest videos on this series, because I still absolutely love the games and want to talk about them again, and to date they still remain unported. And today we're taking a look at OutRunners. Now if you want to leave a comment down below and say there is a Genesis version, that is true, but it is such a cut-down version compared to the arcade original that I really can't even consider it the same game. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and then get a notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But when I say OutRunners is a perfect arcade game, I mean it for myself personally, but I do feel like in the pantheon of 2D arcade racing games, it really genuinely is a perfect game. And it's running on the System Multi-32, because even though I'm not showing it to you in the capture, you can have two screens up at once for head-to-head racing. But the entire OutRun franchise is legendarily good, my favorite being OutRun 2, the arcade original version, although the Xbox version I own is very, very good as well. And outside of crashing into that stone pillar right there, one of the #1 things I love about OutRunners is its ability to scale 2D to make it look like actual 3D. As you come around corners and that background moves in real time and gives you a sense of perspective, this I think is about as close as Sega ever got to making 2D assets genuinely feel like they work in full 3D environments. It is not an easy game though, especially on some of the courses you can take. You will definitely crash that car more than once. And if somehow you've never played an OutRun game, it does have branching paths. And this one has so many fun things to look at and so many different routes to take. You really have almost not infinite replayability, but a ton of replayability. But again, just look at everything going by, these trees, the birds flying across the screen, going under this forest canopy here, in motion when your car is at full speed, and this game is drawing everything at 60 frames a second. The sensation of motion is better than I think anything Sega ever did in 2D. I just love how this game just blows by the screen, and even something like a crash, the animations where you end up flipping back into your convertible. Every single square pixel in this game has consideration put into it. There's always something to look at and always something to see. The only problem with that is you really should be focusing on the road, because you need to be drifting that car around everywhere. And in the background there's the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, a place I've been in real life. And I love that they take little bits of architecture and bring them in to sell the overall vibe. And this field with the sunflowers as they're blowing by and you're going up and down hill, it just looks incredible in motion. I can't get enough of it, and I am still continually impressed and surprised what Sega could do with 2D hardware. This is a masterclass in 2D art and sprite scaling, and I will stand behind it any day of the week. Now I definitely know that I apologize for some games that aren't great and say that I really love them, but in my opinion this is a perfect racing game. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think, and tell me what your perfect arcade racing game is, because I would be curious. But there's absolutely nothing I can think of that I would change about OutRunners. It has everything I want. As we go into a new stage here, one of the best things is just the driving mechanics. Obviously, being an arcade racing game, if the driving controls are not good, it doesn't matter how pretty it is, and it doesn't matter how well it scales sprites. If you can't turn the wheel and get feedback, then it's not going to be a good time. And Sega also nailed this. The sensation of speed, the handling of the vehicle, the drifting around the corners. If you make a mistake, it's because you made the mistake, not because the game was fighting you. You really need to understand the turns, memorize the courses, understand where to let off the gas, and know when to put that foot down to the absolute metal. If you learn everything, you can run this game from start to finish on hard mode and basically be perfect. But it does take a little bit of learning curve, because every single course is different and there are so many different routes you can take. And as we move into Sydney here with the ocean on the left hand side, I just love drifting around the corners. And that's why I love this franchise so much, and why OutRun 2 is such a great game as well. It's just perfect driving controls, but the game also has an amazing soundtrack, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll be right back. Just love that soundtrack, but if I can make one complaint about the game, it would be that the tire screeching noises and engine noises kind of overwhelm the music in spots, and you can turn the volume on those down, but it still always seems to be balanced in a way in which it's slightly too loud for my taste. But if that's the only complaint I can think about making about OutRunners, then I think the game is doing an excellent job. But let's move on here to a completely different course, and I love how Sega has managed to put little bits of cultural detail in as well. Those two racers, if they're not Thelma and Louise, I would be very shocked, because even their ending being chased by police has a Thelma and Louise vibe, and maybe you haven't seen that movie, and if you haven't, I highly recommend you watch it because it is incredible. But driving over the Golden Gate Bridge here, definitely shorter than in real life, but it's still a ton of fun. But again, just drifting this corner here, coming all the way around, I should have let up on the gas ever so slightly there, but I thought I could squeak it out. This game is risk versus reward. Do you think you can make that turn with the pedal all the way down to the floor, or do you think you need to let up? If you read it just right and you are able to maintain that speed, you're going to do absolutely awesome on your lap time and on your finish time. But you need to learn when too much is too much, because that first instinct is always, I can make that turn. But you'll see there, I knew I was going to drift into the wall, so I let off the accelerator ever so slightly, adjusted my car's trajectory, and moved on. But sometimes you just get unlucky. But that's the fun about something like OutRunners. It's learning the course. It has the same sort of feedback loop as a fighting game. You learn your character, you get really good at them, and then suddenly what used to be hard becomes easy. On OutRunners, if you just race maybe 10 times on the same course layout, you're going to know where all of those turns are, and then you're going to be able to make each one of them. But I love going into Hong Kong here as well, and it's kind of funny, I already talked about Dirt Dash. Hong Kong with double-decker red buses, 100% a thing that happens in a lot of racing games. It's been in OutRunners, it's been in Dirt Dash, and it's been in Extreme Rally on the Hyper Neo Geo 64. It's just a good look, and everyone loves to take advantage of it. But I do love how graphically the game's constantly changing the colorways, the time of day, and you even get that pseudo reflection of the downtown Hong Kong area in the background. Of course, it's not actually a reflection, it's just the same pattern inverted and slightly shadowed for that water. But I'm going to give you one more taste of the soundtrack, because it does change in every single area, and I'll come back and talk more about the history of the game and why I love it so much. But enjoy. Just so much fun on that soundtrack. And as we get into another area here, I love the elephants just running down the road. But you can't talk about OutRunners without talking about the System 32 hardware and its ability to push these sprites, and the fact that it's all doing it at real time with absolutely zero slowdown. This was a special piece of hardware, and it wasn't extremely complex as well. The engineers at Sega knew how to take a chip or two and make it do things that you would never expect be possible. And like I said, we're getting really close into 3D territories here, because this game basically came out around the same time that Virtua Racing did, and it's so interesting to think that these two games basically existed side by side. You had the pinnacle of what 2D sprite scaling technology could do, next to the advent of 3D arcade racing games on the Sega side. But again, I mentioned earlier that this is definitely Thelma and Louise, and I love that you get these little story vignettes as you finish, because you come in here to celebrate, and then suddenly something very similar is going to happen. The police are going to show up, and Thelma and Louise are going to try to escape. Now, I hope they do better than in the movie, and I won't spoil it if you've never seen the ending, but it seems like they got away with their lives in this one. Let's take one more tour around one more course, just kind of showing you different areas. It is just such a beautiful game to look at, and that's what the developers and artists at Sega did so well. They didn't just make games that were incredible to play, they made games that were incredible to play and also look at the same time. Going through the cherry blossoms here in Japan, it just looks so good, and it's such an iconic moment. And again, every single character and every single car has their own crashing animation, and those two people ran alongside their car till they could jump back in. This game just has personality, and that's what I want out of all of my arcade games. I want a viewpoint, I want a personality, I want a real sense of this game being special and unique, and OutRunners 100% gives that to me in excess, and that's why I love this game so much, and it was on my Hall of Fame list. I play this like every 3 to 4 months, and I absolutely love it every single time. I play the entire OutRun franchise at least once a year. OutRun, OutRun 2, OutRunners. If it's got the word OutRun in it, it is a game I love that's in my collection and that I absolutely have to play. So for that reason and that reason alone, it's why it made the unported Hall of Fame list, and it's one of those things I always wanted to revisit this video. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do it until I came up with that Hall of Fame aspect. But just going through Greece here, going through all this ancient architecture, it just looks incredible, and it still impresses to this day. Now, this game is 3 decades old, but if you released it today, I 100% believe that reviewers would absolutely be blown away by the technology. Not as far as how advanced it was, but how good it is at actually simulating the full feel of 3D. Sega was onto something so far before 3D would ever become a thing. And I do wish we would get more games like this. I know we get indie 2D games, but no one ever really does the sprite scaling too much, and I would love to see something like this taken on in a real 3D engine, and maybe there's an example that I don't know about, so if there is, leave me a comment down below and tell me what I should be looking at, because there's so many indies I can't keep up. But when this game was in arcades, when I walked in as a kid and played it, I was 100% blown away, and it became one of my favorite games of all time. And I did have a copy of the Genesis version as well, and it just didn't hit the same way. I'm not saying that game's not good, I'm just saying that this game is infinitely better than the Genesis version, and it's so weird that Sega has not brought this to any other platform. The cars really aren't licensed. There doesn't seem to be any reason we don't have this at home outside of Sega being Sega and just never porting some of their best games to home consoles, because I 100% thought I was going to get a copy of this for my Sega Saturn, and that just didn't happen. Short of that, OutRunners, Hall of Fame game, I love it, and I'll see you guys next time. I have one. Bye-bye.